Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In this world, a woman's fate is as uncertain as that of a floating duckweed, never knowing where her ultimate destination lies. Women in the feudal era were akin to weeds, especially those confined within the tightly sealed palace walls, unsure of what tomorrow may bring. With the abdication of the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, Puyi, a vast palace system began to disintegrate alongside his departure. Dispersed palace maids faced new life challenges, yet sadly, they didn't find the happiness and fulfillment they had hoped for. Instead, they were coldly rejected by society, with no one willing to marry them. This harsh reality raised widespread attention and questions. Why couldn't these once highly educated and esteemed palace maids find suitable marriage partners? Was it societal discrimination or deeper underlying reasons? Currently, this fog seems to have been partially lifted by the last emperor, Puyi. The feudal era was a misfortune for humanity, where societal equality vanished, leaving a few to enjoy wealth and luxury while most struggled in adversity. Many social ills arose during this time, and palace maids became sacrificial victims. As the lowest class in society, they had no rights, thus most palace maids were ignorant of survival skills. Their only skill was serving others, coupled with the ability to observe and understand people's intentions. They had little understanding of life itself, and as a result, their destinies were tragic. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, Puyi's quality of life greatly diminished. Although the Beiyang government allowed him to continue residing in the Forbidden City and provided an annual stipend, the expenses of maintaining numerous dependents in the palace were significant. With no other source of income, Puyi couldn't afford to support everyone in the palace with his stipend alone. Consequently, he had to lower living standards and reduce the number of residents. Under these circumstances, only those exceptional in service and appearance remained, while many palace maids were sent back to their hometowns. Each released palace maid received 100 taels as a resettlement fee, seemingly a generous gift but actually pushing them into deeper despair. At that time, 100 taels wasn't much, especially considering inflation and currency devaluation. The palace maids left the Forbidden City with these funds, their futures uncertain. Some naturally returned home, welcomed joyously by their families, some cleverly planned their exits and quickly stabilized their lives outside. However, those without family or skills were particularly lost. Despite having money, their later years were unsettled, forcing them to seek refuge. Some found employment in noble households to continue serving, some joined eunuchs to make a living, while others squandered their funds or even resorted to prostitution. One can imagine the plight of these vulnerable women, alone and destitute, facing an uncertain future. They endured hardships for survival, let alone finding someone to marry. Surprisingly, nobody was willing to wed these palace maids. In Puyi's memoirs, he revealed the heart-wrenching truth. The palace was a place where people were consumed and forgotten. Many palace members found it difficult to attain freedom due to physical constraints and mental indoctrination. Most low-status palace maids didn't dare to dream of leaving and gradually lost contact with their families, resigning themselves to dying within its walls. Many of the disbanded palace maids were like this, chosen for the palace at a young age, lacking knowledge, talent, or skills, spending their days serving and working. They wasted their best years behind the palace walls. In peaceful times, aging palace maids could become matrons in the palace, teaching younger maids and living a tolerable life. However, with the fall of the Qing dynasty, these older maids lost everything in an instant. Leaving the palace, they found no suitors, and their later years were filled with uncertainty. This was only one of the reasons. Even young palace maids, around 20 years old, found no suitors. This was because life in the palace was too complex, and few palace maids could remain pure in such an environment. Women in the palace, from concubines to maids, all sought the emperor's favor to elevate their status. Some palace maids schemed to climb into the emperor's bed, hoping for a better life. If successful, they could become someone important, no longer serving others. Those fortunate enough to bear the emperor's child would gain status and have a promising future. Some palace maids were attracted to generals and guards in the palace, their hearts swayed by their charisma. Despite being in the palace, romantic entanglements between young palace maids and guards were numerous, but as women, most couldn't escape the fate of being abandoned. Although men were scarce in the palace, eunuchs couldn't be ignored. Despite their unique physical condition, they still had desires in their adolescence. Thus, palace maids became objects of their desire, even being forced to live with eunuchs. In such a vast palace, palace maids found it hard to maintain their innocence, leading to nobody wanting them after leaving. However, besides these reasons, there was a deeper cause for why nobody married palace maids. Later, Puyi recalled these events, revealing the tragic origin of palace maids. They suffered from blood stasis. These young girls, entering the palace at a tender age, endured prolonged oppression and labor, always cautious and tense. Long-term emotional strain led to physical depletion, resulting in infertility. During that time, feudal ideology was prevalent, emphasizing filial piety and the importance of progeny. Marrying a wife who couldn't bear children was a disgrace to the ancestors. Even if someone overlooked a palace maid's chastity, they had to consider her ability to bear children. With blood stasis, pregnancy was impossible, extinguishing the possibility of marriage for palace maids. The fate of palace maids after the fall of the Qing dynasty reveals the persecution and unfair treatment of women in the feudal era. Even if they gained freedom, they were left with nothing and faced a tragic end. This is just a microcosm of women's fate during the feudal era, where many lived cautiously and struggled. Fortunately, that era has become history, with the arrival of civilization altering the male-dominated social structure, granting women relatively fair treatment. Let us remember this history and strive not to repeat it. This is History and Culture channel. Like and subscribe are the biggest help and support for us. Thank you everyone. See you next time.